Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent.
Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be on this planet. It is good to be with you again. My name is Merwe, coming to you live from Conscious Consumer Network headquarters here in Portugal. Wow, what a great week it has been. So much going on and a lot of airtime being given to the various causes that we're fronting. And I just wanted to say that we're very proud of all the work that's been done by people behind the scenes to raise awareness and to just bring some aid and help to those who most need it. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch. We have forwarded your details to all the people who need those details, and we look forward to hearing and seeing what manifests from all of it. I just want to say a big hello, of course, to my co-host Karin Smith, and of course our guest for this evening, Schalk from Merwe, who has been with us previously. And well, it was an interesting journey last time you were with us. So we're going to get back into that tonight.
So last time Schalk was with us, we did a very quick run through on South African history. So over the next month or two, we're going to go into it very slowly, piece by piece, so that people really understand the story. I suggest you pull up a comfortable chair, get your bowl of popcorn. We are going to tell you an incredible story of the forging of a nation, the beginnings of a people, their own language being formed. We are going to tell you a story of heroism, of moments of shame, of huge battles, of enormous riches in diamonds and gold. And you really need to be comfortable and listen to this, because it is one of the most incredible stories of the modern world. And like all good stories, it begins with once upon a time in a land far, far away on the southern tip of the mysterious dark continent of Africa. And Schalk, that is your cue.
Thank you very much, Karin. Yes, last time we covered quite an amount of work. I think we literally took it from where it started all the way to the birth of the new South Africa. So you can leave me. I can entertain you on any part of history that you want me to give a little bit more details tonight. What do you prefer? Where can we go?
Well, Schalk, what I'm thinking is we need to really start with who was Jan van Riebeeck, and the fact that he did not want to colonize South Africa. We didn't cover that. And in light of that new movie that just came out about the Khoi lady, Princess whatever her name is, and the story that's being told there that Jan van Riebeeck took her and made her a slave, we really need to do our very best to counter the lies that have been told about South African history and what we did from the beginning. So if you could explain why Van Riebeeck was sent to the Cape and why he didn't want to stay there. I mean, we have dozens of letters from him saying, please take me away from this place.
No, I don't think he ever took to the Cape as people do these days. It's supposed to be this great tourism destination these days, but I think old Jan had his plans of simply returning and going on with his career. It was simply a stop in his road. Okay, let's start. Why in the first place would Europeans think about colonizing or settling or starting anything at the Cape of Good Hope? In those years it was also called the Cape of Storms. It was actually in the first called the Cape of Storms because it's this hugely stormy area of the Atlantic Ocean, very far to the south. Why? For the very simple reason that the trade routes through Europe overland and through the Middle East in those days, it was the Silk Route and the spice routes to the Far East. Those became involved in constant warfare, and the Tatars and the Cossacks, and everybody was harassing the trade routes. And so at that point in time, the European powers started looking south and wondering if they can't go around Africa. So the first people actually rounding the Cape of Storms, Cape Town and Cape of Colombo just south of it is the most southern point in Africa. The first people rounding it was not the Dutch people. It was not the Dutch people, it was actually the Portuguese people. And they rounded the Cape as early as 1488. Diaz rounded the Cape, and I think he simply just didn't have enough in him to really take it all the way to India, and he actually returned to Portugal. Later on in 1512, we were Vasco da Gama, and he was also basically Portuguese seafarer. He rounded the Cape again, and at that point he actually made the route all the way to India, and he returned. And this was great news to the European seafaring nations and trading nations, because now they have a route sea-wise around the Cape. It's very far, but it's a much safer route than the one overland through all the hostile countries between the old Europe and the old Far East, China and India. Okay, let's fast forward a century on, about a century and a half on, and the Dutch actually decided. By that time, there were a whole lot of ships rounding the Cape on a regular basis on the state route, and the Dutch decided that they would start up a post there, basically foodstuffs, etc., rations for the ships, all those types of things. And they think this, he was called in account in Dutch, we called him a koopman, a trader, by the name of Jan van Riebeek, and 3 ships. And they were seen there not to colonize Africa or the Cape, just simply to start up a halfway post there so the ships can stop, low fresh food, maybe rest a little bit fresh water, everything, and go on their journey either back to Europe or on their destination to India. So the idea of the Dutch was at no point to go and colonize Africa. Now let's quickly speak about the Khoisan people, the so-called in the olden days they were referred to as the Hottentots and the Bushmen. These days they refer to much more generically as Khoisan people. They were hunter-gatherers, and some of them, especially the Hottentots, the people were herdsmen. And they lived nomadically all over the southern part of Africa. There were no Khoisan states per se or countries. They were living in small scattered family groups and tribes all over the place. And when the Dutch landed, they went out of their way to have good relationships or good relations with the Khoisan people living in the area of there's a very good reason why, because they never wanted to colonize or take over the land or anything like that. They simply wanted to trade with the ships running around the Cape. So they didn't want war, they didn't want animosity from the local people living. So this idea of the Dutch landing there and now all of a sudden starting to slave everybody and capture them and going back to Europe and this narrative being built, it's simply not true. It's never happened. It's simple as that. In fact, the Dutch people started trading as Dutch people usually do. They started trading with the Khoisan people, buying sheep and buying goats and buying cattle to sell to the ships. So it was good business to them. So why would they then try to make war on these people and enslave and become their enemies? It simply doesn't make sense. So that was basically what happened at the start of the Dutch colony at the Cape of Good.
And so they traded with these people, but they did have some run-ins with them, obviously, with the very different cultures, etc. And the Khoisan, anything that grew on the land belonged to the people, so they could then go and raid your farm, and make off with your fruit and vegetables, etc. They did have run-ins with those people, but it was never an all-out war or taking them into slavery like people have said, etc.
No, definitely not. You must also understand. We're speaking now of the most early phases of the colony of the Cape Line. Later on, as more Europeans started to settle from Europe, the Dutch people and German people, later on even French people, but that's quite a bit later, about 30 years after the time of the Cape colony. They started to move a little bit out from the first and fourth. It was only a little fort, Dutch fort there, later on a moving systematically into the interior of the Cape Peninsula, not even of the deep interior of South Africa, not the Cape Peninsula. Speaks for itself that from time to time there would have been some clashes and people would have disagreements. And the poison come and steal the cattle and so forth, and then the rain party will go it would have gone out and then simply take that. But the narrative and the pictures you see sometimes in history books of the Dutch people going and capturing whole tribes and now shipping them to Europe, etc. That is simple nonsense, and here why it is nonsense. The Dutch people very quickly found out that the Khoisan people, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Very early on.
You've got a very, very soft sound, but we can hear you.
Let me try a little bit. Yeah. I'm up to maximum here, so I really hope.
Yeah, that's a lot better, Schalk. A great deal better.
Okay, let's leave it like that. Okay, so early on the Dutch people, what I was saying is it's a simple nonsensical narrative being told of the Dutch capturing slaves in Africa and now exporting them to Europe. And here's the reason why I say it's nonsensical. Very early on, the Dutch realized that the local Khoisan people, and I'm not saying that they were lazy per se, but they were simply not fit to work hard labor. Now, if you look at the Khoisan person, especially the Bushmen, the San people, they are very small, tiny people. Not huge, but they are very small in their build. If they grow past 1.4 meters in length, that's quite tall Bushmen. So they were simply not fit to work for the Dutch. And what the Dutch started doing was to import slaves, not export slaves, import slaves from the Far East, from Indonesia, and those colonies held by the Dutch. And that is where the colored people of South Africa still today, the Malay people in the Cape still have their character from, because they were imported into South Africa. We never people out of South Africa. We simply imported them, we imported them. So if that answers your question relating to slavery, I hope so. You have incidents where Dutch people and even later the English people capture these people, these Khoisan people. And but what happened was that they were taken to Europe for scientific purposes to be exhibited like in the zoo and those things. But those were isolated incidents, and I'm very sure it was Europe exactly the same as it's not a cultural thing or what thing or anything.
Schalk, we're losing you again. The last 2 or 3 words there are lost completely. I don't think your internet's very strong tonight, but that's South Africa.
Let's see the connection. I just want to make very sure. Yeah, we don't have much connection. I will try my utmost best. I hope you're hearing me.
Yeah, no, that I can hear you. You just keep fading away and getting a bit of a I don't know what you would call it. I'm not technical, actually. I'm technically challenged here. So, yeah, the point is that we never exported. There were never any slaves exported from Southern Africa. We imported slaves, but we did not export them, because that's one of the big things that people seem to think is that the Dutch landed in South Africa, herded a whole bunch of Africans into captivity and sent them off somewhere, which is not the truth at all, because we even stopped slavery before the United States did.
Yes, that's right. And that's quite, yes, you're quite right. That's a little bit later on in history. But once again, I'm coming back to the point of the Khoisan people physically not being a caliber of slaves. Now, if you go to West Africa, the Negro people living there, they are large, tall, very strong people. So those people were they fit the mold that you wanted to slave. What would you do with a Khoisan person? They're simply not strong enough even to work. So why try to export it? It becomes a nonsensical notion that they're looking. you must also remember that up the east coast of Africa, it was certainly not the Europeans capturing slaves. It was one black or African tribe who would go and capture the other and sell them off to the Arabs and the Indians. So it was Europeans at that point in time enslaving black people from Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be very simple about this. If there was this constant flow of black Africans to Europe at that point in time, their offspring, their children, grandchildren, etc., generations from there would still have been there in Europe.
Yeah.
There's not a local black population like we have in North America, in Europe. There's no record, no historical record whatsoever of slaves from Southern Africa reaching the North American or even the South American country. There's nothing like that. So you can simply wipe that from the slate of history. It's nonsensical.
And then our Malay population that were brought in, they have had an enormous impact on South African culture, South African food, even the way we dress in South Africa. They had a huge impact because the population was so small at that stage in the Cape, that these people, I mean, the Cape Coloureds today are the funniest people ever. They practically have their own language, although it's a form of Afrikaans. It's just so funny. But they have traditions of their own. They're almost like a side group of the Afrikaans people because they continued with their religion, their traditions, their music. It's not like that was beaten out of them as slaves and they were forced to integrate with the European way of life.
No, exactly. Yes, here's a dirty little secret about the Afrikaner people, that many Afrikaners are very, very scared to even acknowledge. But it's there. We are part of blood. We have a lot of Malay blood, and we even have Khoisan blood if you really go into the force. It speaks for itself that sailors were climbing off ships, and mercenaries were climbing off ships and starting to settle around the casting touchdown. And there were no women. The only women that were there were either slave girls that they then freed and married, because you can't marry a slave. It's technically illegal, technically it's impossible to do that, so they have to be freed. Or then simply taking a voice from life. So even in my own history as mine, but stumble, I'm not saying in English, my family tree, we all find colored blood. It was only when the English started arriving that you had this harsh segregation of races in South Africa. Now, before the English came, it was mostly down to the Dutch Reformed Church or the religion, the churches, to keep the races separate. The whole thing was preached that God created different peoples and therefore they shouldn't mix, etc. But it was not political, it was not systematic as you had under the British. Much like it was after the 1800s when the British, the English came to South Africa.
So at that stage it was kind of a personal moral thing.
Yes.
It wasn't legislated, it was a personal thing at that stage. And so the Dutch people, as I understand it, Schalk, the Dutch people who settled the Cape, they were indentured servants and they could buy their way out of indentured state, and then they were given a piece of land or bought a piece of land, but they had to sell only to the Dutch East India Company at prices set by the Dutch East India Company.
Yes, that's a fact. The people coming to the Cape, especially in the earlier part of the Cape colony, were mostly the employees of the Dutch East India Company, the COC, the Verenigde Indische Compagnie. So they were working for the company, for the company. And very early on, I think the Dutch East India Company realized that if they let loose a lot of Europeans running amok into the interior, they would end up with the responsibility of the problem. And that is why they try to control and keep these people as close as possible, physically and in law and economy, to the heart, the partner and so forth. So even much later on, about 50 years on, we still found only Europeans living in what is today called the Cape Peninsula. They weren't even into the area. It was only much later on the Vryburgers. Vryburgers, they even started a little bit earlier on, but Vryburgers started moving to a little bit farther out into the Cape Peninsula and the flatlands at the back of the mountain and so forth. So it was never, you're quite right when you started the discussion, it was never the idea of now colonizing the whole Africa from the southern. If the Dutch wanted to do that, they would have done that from Morocco or the Canary Islands, in which they also have access to that.
Instead of this horrible, barren, dry area of South Africa where nobody had been before, and it was very scary, you know. No, they wouldn't. I doubt if they would have done that. But the strategic importance of the Cape and the ships surrounding the Cape, that still applies today, does it not?
Yes. The Cape is most probably, if you really go and take geopolitics, is probably the most strategic place on earth. For the very simple reason, you can go to the Panama, and we're not speaking history now, we're speaking current politics. You can go to the Panama Canal, but only up to a certain size of ship. So even you can't send oil tankers through the Panama Canal, and you can barely send some of them through the Suez Canal, which is on top there at Egypt and Israel. And of course, you're always sitting with the problems in the Middle East. So the oil tankers from the Middle East running to Europe and the rest of the world, they are still down in the Cape. It's still that important. It's still that strategic. How do you command the southern Atlantic? You will have to take over Cape. You will have to go and put your ships in Simon's Town Harbor. That is the only way that you can dominate the southern Atlantic. And we even saw that during the Falklands Wars, where the Argentine, which is a huge, big country at the southern tip of Southern America, could not dominate the Atlantic Ocean because the British still held Cape Town, and they could start operating in that area. How do you dominate the Indian Ocean? You dominate it from South Africa. It's still as strategic as that. And that is why the Dutch wanted it. It was for strategic and trade purposes. Let's just quickly speak about the white colonists starting to move inland, because this is now very important for the whole narrative of whites taking off the land from the black people. When these colonists started moving into the interior, all that they found were these scattered small groups of Khoisan people living. I don't have any problem with that part of it. That's a fact. The Khoisan people were there in South Africa for thousands of years. And we know that because we can go and find their place. They've been here. That's never a problem for the history and the true facts of it. But there were no black people, Negro people, and Bantu people, black people at that point in time living around. There were also no black people living in the Karoo, at the Namakwaland. The Namakwa was one of the Khoisan tribes, and further on into the area. There were no black people living there. In fact, I don't think the Dutch even realized that there were black people living in southern Africa at that point in time, because they simply had no contact with these people. The only and the first time that white settlers and black settlers, because they were also settlers, they were also moving at that point in time. The only time that they started to actually have contact was only in the late 1800s, 18th century, the 1700s. And they actually on the point of the Kai River and the Fish River in the eastern Cape of the Cape. Now, if you look at the map of South Africa, it's a huge distance from Cape Town. It's huge. The size of Texas times 2. It was only then and then that white colonists and black colonists for the first time, it's written in history. And it's not only written in history. We had 11 border wars through the years by the British for the most part in that area. In the 1820s, they even imported Hessians, which are basically German people, and the British settlers from Britain themselves into those areas to bolster the white colonist population there. These are all historic facts that you can never get around. So in other words, beyond the point of the Kai River and the Fish River, you never had black settlement at any point ever. It simply did not exist. So if it speaks for itself, if they were not living beyond that line, it's impossible for white colonists to have taken land from black colonists or even slaves there, because they were not living there. They were not physically there.
Yeah. So Schalk, explain how the Cape then changed hands. It became a British, and then it became back to the Dutch again, and then back to the British again. Please explain that, because it's a very complicated piece of history that people really don't understand.
Let me make it as simple as possible for you. During the Napoleonic Wars around the start of the 1800s, Britain tried to dominate the high seas. The British fleet was still the strongest fleet. It remained the strongest fleet up till the early 1900s, when the Americans took that title. But at that point in time, the British Navy, the Royal Navy, was still the most dominant navy on earth. Napoleon started building ships. He said, well, if I have 150 ships of a line, then I will defeat the British. I have only 102 ships, and they will also be building it, etc. But it all remained, or it came back to the strategic value of the Cape and the trade routes around the Cape. So what the British did, they simply went and they made war against the Dutch. That stage called the Republic, the Batavian Republic. They made war against the Dutch people who were fighting on the side of Napoleon at that point in time, and they went and they took the Cape from the Dutch. The Dutch at that stage they weren't as strong and powerful as they were in previous years. They couldn't defend the Cape, and the British took it over. During a lull in the fighting during the Napoleonic Wars, I mean, they warred for about 20 years non-stop. There were certain times that they actually came to some treaties and peace at some point. It was decided by convention that the Dutch would get back to the Cape. Now, even up to today, we still say the Cape is now the Hollands. It simply means the Cape is now Dutch again. So for the Dutch colonists, the French colonists, and the Germans, they were very glad when it was returned to the Dutch. Very soon after that, the war started up again in Europe, the following war, and in 1806, the British came and they finally took the Cape. And then by the peace of I'm not sure, it ended the Napoleonic Wars, 1815. As from then, it was always a British colony. So it was because of the Napoleonic Wars that it changed hands from the Dutch to the British. Because of the importance of Cape.
It's a very strange story, that one. One day we belong to Holland, next day we belong to the UK, and then we belong to Holland again. Well, a very, very, very strange story, that whole one, which people just don't know about and don't understand it and whatever. But so then, okay, so we have this, the Cape has now become Cape Town. We've built the castle, which at that stage was probably a bit of a mud hut, really. It wasn't as we know it today, this beautiful place, but it was built. And so when did we know when the Huguenots arrived, the 1820 settlers, but they also had an enormous effect on the culture of South Africa. So did they arrive before or after the trek started?
Now that was way before the trek started.
Yeah.
The Huguenots, now what is a Huguenot? Huguenots were Calvinistic Protestants, French, that the Edict of Nantes was a law by the King of France that granted them freedom of religion. Later on, French kings came and they retracted that edict, that law. And all of a sudden it became illegal for the Protestants in France, the Catholic country at that stage. Now remember that the background of this is huge religious wars in Europe. Right? For instance, 1618 to 1648, the 50 Years' War in Germany, for instance, was mainly religious war, but also in Britain and all over the place, in Spain, all over the place. And in France, it became illegal to be a Protestant and specifically a Calvinist. Why is that important? Because the Dutch Republic is Calvinist. Calvinism is a type of Protestant. It's very simplistic. It goes back to the core of Christianity, etc. And of course, the Cape was also Calvinist. What now happened was that these illegal Protestants were granted a right to leave. The king, the Christians said, well, we're not going to exterminate you if you leave. And they started leaving all over the place. One place that they started leaving to was actually
Sorry to interrupt. Do you want to turn your video off and maybe your audio will improve? We can try that.
What put off?
Turn your video off.
Okay.
No, still got your video. Yeah, okay. Not.
Okay.
Let me see if your audio improves because sometimes it does. So you were telling us about.
Yes, I was saying. So can you hear me?
That's much better. Schalk, that is wonderful. Thank you. I'm sorry we can't see you, but I'd rather have you heard than not heard.
I'm better to listen to than to see. So it's fine with me too. But
I feel the same way, I promise you. But yeah, I can hear you much better now. That's wonderful.
That's excellent. So what I was saying, so these Protestants from France started moving into Holland, the Dutch Republic at that point, and the Dutch realized that they could bolster their number of colonists to the Cape by sending these French Huguenots all the way to the Cape. And many of them, in fact, took up that offer, they jumped into the ships, and they went to South Africa. That was 1688, and they started settling there. Very quickly after that, they became Africanized, and they started speaking Dutch, etc. But the French character of those people were also influenced into the white population. So you definitely have that too. It was certainly not only the French. I'm losing you now, and I have a lot of background noise, but I will keep on going. It was also not simply the French. It was also colonists from Germany, all over Germany, that started to move there, especially because of the 30 Years' War, the desolation that the whole of Germany was left after the 30 Years' War. So many of those people also started moving all over the world into the colonies. One of them simply being South Africa.
And those people had an incredible effect as well on the eventual culture of the Afrikaner or the Boer, whatever you want to call them, because the Afrikaans nation is generally very Calvinistic, so and very religious, and it came from the combination of the Dutch with the Gereformeerde Kerk and the Huguenots with their Calvinistic view of life.
Yes, that's a fact. In America, I think the closest we were broadcasting to America too, I would suppose. For instance, the Amish people and the Mennonites, those are also Calvinists. And you could still go and see how those people live. And that was basically the same way that the early Dutch people in South Africa, well, not even the early Dutch people, even my grandparents still lived in that way. It was only the last 50 or so years or 60 years before the coming of the New South Africa that Afrikaans people really started to become more liberal in their religion and things. But that was the way that they always lived. Yeah. Very religious, very prudent, and very close to themselves. They lived from the Bible. They saw themselves actually, and it's still today a phenomenon among South Africans or Afrikaners for that matter. They saw themselves as the people of the book, the mensen van die book, before coming from the book. Because they saw themselves as given a godly instruction to bring Christianity to Africa and bring civilization to Africa. not in the colonialist and arrogant way that the British would have done. Definitely not that. But simply as this is now my duty as a good Christian to do this or that in family.
And that is a very, very important point in creating the tribe of white South Africans, because that is the basis of everything that they did and do today. A lot of South Africans, it is strictly based on biblical teachings. They taught their children to read and write from the Bible. I remember going to Sunday lunch with my great grandmother. She was a Derech. She was a General Wessels' daughter. And she still wore the black kappie, and we still came straight from church, and they had this enormous table in their dining room. It must have seated about 18 people. The adults all ate in the dining room, the children ate in the kitchen. But even though you had just come from church, out came the Bible, and you had your Bible reading and your prayers, and grandma, she ruled the roost with a rod of iron, but she wore her black dress and her black kappie until the day she died. And I mean, that's in my lifetime, Schalk. So as you say, the South African Afrikaner lived that way until our lifetimes. It's not an old-fashioned way of living. It was still in this century that those things were normal to a South African family.
Yes, we're dropping a little bit of point, but this is so interesting that I wanted the listeners to really have this little peek into what Afrikaners. Now, okay, I'm going to put a footnote to what I'm saying now in a moment, Afrikaner and Boer. But I want the listener to have this view of how these people actually work. It's not these slaving white monsters going into the interior of Africa making war. That was never what happened. It was these high pious religious people simply wanting freedom and simply wanting to be left alone. Okay, just for the listener who maybe don't understand the racial mix up of the white population of South Africa. From those early stems of Germans and Dutch and French grew what is called today the Afrikaner people. Very early on, I think it was still in the 17th century, you had a certain guy from the name of Bibo, and he became drunk and he rode with his horse down the main street of Stellenbosch, and he shouted, "Ik ben een Afrikaner." That is still Dutch. It simply means I'm an Afrikaner. So yeah, that was basically that was the origins of the Afrikaner people. But later on, you had a great influx of British people. Many of them still today speak English. They are called the Engels, the English. They are also part of the racial mix up there. You had Portuguese people coming in. You had Greek people coming in, etc. But in the white population of South Africa, the Afrikaner, the Boer people, see themselves as a specific race, as a specific nation. And white people, it's a much broader term. They are more likely to be seen as more colonialistic, not really part of the Afrikaner nation. It's become much more liberal these days, and not that big divide that drag. But my grandparents, for instance, even my parents, still saw this huge divide between the Afrikaner people and the Engels. It was basically true. You will remember also that the great conciliation in South Africa was never between white and black, it was between Boer and Brit, between the Afrikaner and the English. That was the main purpose of the whole 20th century, to bring those two together to form South Africa, the white South Africa that me and you still live in.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely, Schalk, and one needs to understand that to get to grips with the history that we're going to tell later. People really, really need to understand that although we have what is supposed to be a homogenized group of whites in South Africa, we are not really. The Boer still doesn't consider an English person as a real South African. And it becomes a problem when you're trying to reach hands across the aisle and make things work today. So what you are just telling us is very, very important for people to understand, that the Donner se Engelsman and the Boer and Afrikaner have never really been friends.
Yeah, that's a fact. And you find it economically, you find it culturally, you find it religiously, you find it politically. The English people were always more liberal in the outlook, whereas Afrikaners were more conservative. So the Afrikaners would vote Nationalist Party, they were called a Natte, and the English people and some of the Afrikaners would vote South African Party, the SAPA, and even on political terms, they never seem to really gel together. Even today, it's like that. It's much more fluent in these days, and many of Afrikaners are speaking English rather than Afrikaans. You'll find that. But there's still this divide. I saw it just a week ago when the new chairperson of the Afrikaans, the ATKV, the Afrikaanse Taal en Kultuurvereniging. Supposedly, when she came to power now, she held a media conference, the first one in English, and she invited Kusati, one of the black trade unions, and all of a sudden, this huge flow of Afrikaners, all of a sudden saying, yeah, but she's now taking over the ATKV, and she's going to make it English. Now that tells me something about the psychosis or the soul of the Afrikaner people. We are still Afrikaners. We are still fighting the Anglo-Boer War with good reason. It was a genocide. It was like the German and the Jew will never be friends. I think in the same way a real Boer and a real Brit will also never be friends. Because what happened during the Boer War and what happened after the Boer War. In 1914, the rebellion. In the 1930s, the persecution against the nationalists. In the 1940s, the Osserwa Brandbach versus the royalists of General Smuts. It was always this fight. What did the Boer one try to achieve? He didn't want to achieve apartheid. He wanted to achieve the Republican ideal of the Afrikaners to be free from Britain. That was what the National Party was all about. It wasn't about apartheid. It was freeing the Afrikaners, the Boers, from British rule. So even up to 1961, when the Republic was reestablished, that was the main focus of politics in South Africa. Do we stay part of the British Empire, or do we leave and form a republic? It was never a white-black issue. That was something apart and on its own altogether. So
Schalk, why in the very beginning, in the very beginning, when the British took over the Cape Colony, what was it about the British that this beginning young shoots of a new nation disagreed with so terribly? What did the British do when they took over the Cape Colony that got up the nose of the beginning of the Afrikaner tribe so badly that they still don't like each other to this day? I know there's a lot of history after that, but it began right back then. And what was it? Do you think it was just a sheer difference in culture that did it, or what? I can't come to terms with that. I don't understand.
I can give you the answer, and we're still finding today. The British came to South Africa with this notion and the idea of the people living here for some reason were substandard to them. So they are all even till today. I will come back to the term speaking. Remember that I'm coming back to that. And even the term Boer, I will come back to that. They saw the Dutch people and the German people and the French people living in the Cape as substandard, as uncivilized, as these wild white people running around. While the British saw themselves as culturally and in every way superior to people. So the whole focus of the British colonial system was to basically overturn everything Dutch, everything Afrikaans, and make it English, because somehow that was inferior to them and they were superior. And I think that is the big problem that even still up to today is evident in the relationship with the white world. During the Anglo-Boer War, there was a custom by the British lancers. A lancer is a cavalryman armed with a lance, usually with a short sidearm and a short rifle, but he's primarily armed with a lance. What they would do is after a battle, they would ride through the battlefield. And where they found a wounded Boer, they would simply stick a lance through him and kill him. And that was called pig sticking. Now, what is pig sticking? In India, pig sticking is where you go in the hunting fields and you lance pigs, or pigs. So in other words, to the British troops, there wasn't really a difference between killing a pig and killing a bull. That tells you of what was going on in the mind of the British Empire towards the Boer people during that time. The term Boer, Boer simply means farmer. Why? Most of the Dutch people and the Finnish people living at the Cape at that stage, they were living on the land. They were farmers. They were called Boers, Boera. But if you go to the English language, Boer means something different.
Yeah.
Civilized, dirty, and yeah, it's a very derivative term. So in other words, for the British to even call these Afrikaners these Dutch, because the name Afrikaner overcame much later, 1875, with the Genootschap van Regte Afrikaners. It was recognized at that stage. Even the name Boer, that was later on taken as something honorary now by the Afrikaner people. In the early days, it was a scolding term by the British towards the Dutch people. You're a Boer. Something uncivilized, and that illustrates to you the animosity between the white groups.
Because that's also another very, very big and important part of where South Africa is today, is the inability of the British and the others to find any common ground. So, okay, now we need to go back again because we're leaping forwards, but it's very important that we see that foundation for that dislike was set in the very early stages of the South African growth. So how did your language happen? Afrikaans, they were a polyglot of languages in the Cape, as you've just explained. There was the English, the Dutch, the German, the French. How did Afrikaans happen? Because it is one of the only, or the only, recently established languages in the world. And so it has a place in the story.
Yes, that's very interesting, Karin. Afrikaans and Icelandic are the two languages, the two Germanic languages. What is Germanic language? It's the language group spoken by the Norse people, Finnish people, Danish people, Germans, Dutch people, the people of the Germanic language. Now, Icelandic and Afrikaans are the only two Germanic languages that developed outside mainland Europe. Icelandic, for a very simple reason, the Vikings landed there, and for some years Iceland was forgotten. They were isolated, and that is why they landed very close to the ancient Germanic, by the way, the ancient language of the Vikings. South Africa also being isolated. Now, why Afrikaans? The name says it all. It's the language of Africa, Afrikaans. Afrikaans was originally a kitchen language, a so-called kitchen language, kombuistaal. And that was a little bit lower. High Dutch, the clan people still spoke High Dutch, and the Bible was written in High Dutch, but the older people started speaking a level of Dutch. Borrowed from the Malay language, borrowed from Xhosa language, borrowed from German, borrowed from French, even borrowed from English. So it started to become a lingua franca in South Africa, so that everybody understood Afrikaans in the and it was separate from Dutch, that was supposedly the pure language and the language of education, etc. So for many years, at least for about 200 years, Afrikaans, the language Afrikaans, was seen as something lower than Dutch itself. But through the years, it started to gain respectability, it started to gain status, and then by the second half of the 19th century, you had, especially in the Cape colony at that stage, remember the Boers were very staunch in their view of things. They read the Dutch Bible, everything was written in Dutch, etc. But at the Cape, there were certain people, and they formed what was called the Gemeenschap van Regte Afrikaners, the Society of Real Afrikaners. They, especially the Toy, he was the driving force around it. They started to see Afrikaans as a real language, not simply as something lower and definitely being spoken by poor people and uneducated people. And they started seeing Afrikaans as a real language. And they started to form a vocabulary, they started to write in Afrikaans, and all of a sudden there was this huge boom in the interest of Afrikaans as a language. And that was the second half of the 19th century. And they started to establish the language thing from there on in power as not in competition to Dutch, but something to supersede Dutch. That was the main idea of the Gemeenschap van Regte Afrikaners. And that started to be phased out. People started to rather phase Afrikaans in, and companies and newspapers were established, etc. And then in 1923, very interesting, this is now 2 decades after the Boer War, it's even much later than the First World War, only in 1923 did Afrikaans become an official language in the place of Dutch. But at that stage, it was a full-blown, properly vocalized and vocabularized language equal to any of the European languages. So in a very short space of time, what was seen as this hybrid language, if you're respectable, you don't speak it in public, etc. By the 1850s, all of a sudden grew into this young, modern, wonderful language that we now have. And that's very short, but that's basically the development of Afrikaans.
And that's another very, very important thing that people need to understand, that this language is part and parcel of the marrow of the bones of the Boer people, the Afrikaner people. It's a matter of great, great pride to them. We even have the only monument to a language in the entire world. We have the Afrikaans Taal language monument. It is a very fundamental part of being an Afrikaans South African. And I think that is another thing that really needs to be understood when we get to what is happening today in South Africa, because it is not just a language, it is a people. It is part of their DNA, that language. And what is being done with it today is it's being weaponized and used against them. But I don't want to jump ahead, but I just want to form the foundations of the Calvinist aspect, who the Afrikaner is, how their language came into being, why they left the Cape, why they don't like the British people, and the British don't like them in a lot of cases as well. But these are all fundamental things that happened in the very beginning of the settling of South Africa that have not changed very much to this day. And as Schalk said, the drive of the Afrikaner was to have a piece of land, to be left alone, to live in peace on his land, worship his God, speak his language, live according to the tenets of the Bible, and generally be left alone. And that's all they've ever wanted, and that is still what they want to this day. And for some reason, it's the one thing that they just don't seem to be able to get right, except for small periods of time. So, Schalk, we're kind of at the place now where the Cape is settled, the castle is built, we have indentured servants now who have bought out their indentured papers, who have their own piece of land and property. We've had the change between the British and the Dutch and back to the Dutch again. And now we come to more or less, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we're at the point now where the Boers started trekking inland. What caused that? Why did they leave? And you know, what led to that?
Yes, thank you, Karin. Okay, just to give perspective, we skip a little bit ahead now to when the British already came to South Africa. When the trek Boere started moving from that was still under the Dutch rule. But there were many factors. At some point, many of the trek Boere started disliking the VOC. They wanted to trade with the from their own. They wanted to live freely. That was one of the reasons. Economic, politically, all those things. So at some point in time, in the late 1600s, early 1700s, you had the Dutch colonists and the German colonists. They were called the trek Boere. They started to move ever so far into the land of South Africa.
Schalk, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're losing you again. We've got terrible sound.
Yes, I can also hear you. If we try something. I hope that's a little bit better.
Ah, that's better. That's better. I know your internet is at fault and there's nothing that anyone can do about it. But we're laying the basis here for a long-term story that is very important for the world to hear and to understand. So I don't want them to not be able to hear you.
Yes, yeah. What I was saying, so the trek Boere started moving into the hinterland of South Africa, into the Karoo. Now the Karoo is vast desert areas to the north of the Cape. The southern Cape is a little bit wetter. They started moving ever so far into the hinterland. And those were called the trek Boere. It was gradual. It wasn't like the great trek all of a sudden 1856 and 1854, everybody climbing into their wagons and now moving inwards. It was much more gradual and controlled. But systematically they started to colonize everything in the hinterland of South Africa. So maybe that can assist you. And that was a continuous flow of people and migrants into the deep South Africa until they reached, for instance, the Karin and Fish River that I spoke to earlier, when they started to meet the Xhosa people there, and in the north they ran into the Great Orange River, and of course many of those areas were even more desert than the Karoo, so it simply didn't make sense to them to do even more move further north. And that was the creation of what was later called the Cape Colony by the British societies.
So they didn't go en masse. It would be a family or a party of families would get into their wagons and take their oxen and everything that they thought they would need along the way and set off into the great unknown, because it really was. I mean, they had no idea what was ahead of them. And where they were going or how they were, what they were going to encounter along the way. They just left. I still am in great awe of that, because I don't think that any of us today are equipped to do that kind of thing. Even if I have to go on a car trip, I pack my putt course, and check out the map 13 times and check the weather and make sure that the roads are okay. We are so spoiled that I just can't imagine all your belongings into a wagon and knowing that if anything goes wrong, you're on your own and just going. It's the most amazing story that I could ever think of, is doing that. And yet they just did it, Okay, I'm fed up with this government here. I'm tired of being told what to do. I'm tired of not having peace and quiet. I'm going. And where we end up, well, fine. When we get there, we'll know. It's something unheard of to modern people.
Yes, that's a fact. And you must remember something. In those days, many times you would find that a farmer will have his grapes, his vineyards, those farms around the Cape, but then he will also have these huge herds of goats and cattle, and especially sheep. And those would roam into the Karoo, because Karoo is sheep farming law. It's very, very suitable for sheep farming. So he would have his vineyards and his wine farm and so forth in the Cape, and then in the hinterland he would have his stock farms. And that is basically how they started to move out. But you're quite right. Later on they would simply pack up their stuff, and they would start to move in and claim their piece of land and simply go and live there in the unknown. And there was literally nothing. Don't get this idea of the Khoisan people even living in little villages and so forth. They were fully nomadic. So there was nothing that these colonists basically moved into. It was virgin country. It was simple as that. It's mainly desert, but what the Americans would call a desert, that is basically the hinterland of South Africa before you reach the Free State. I'm living in the Free State. It's still desert. So there's nobody. There were nobody really living there consistently. It was virgin country. It was open country.
You know, Schalk, what really strikes me about this whole thing, there are many films about the Americans getting in the wagons and going west, my son. There are dozens of them, and yet you do not see really. I know the film industry is still in a very young stage in South Africa, but you don't see movies about these heroic men and women in South Africa doing the same thing and facing the most terrible conditions. Because can you imagine with your oxen and your little sheep and whatever, finding the Karoo and going through that, what did they do, 5-10 miles a day? They didn't go very far a day, and never knowing whether you're going to have food for your oxen, whether there's going to be water, and this heat and the dryness just goes on for hundreds of miles. I mean, those people, I don't know, I don't know what to think. And yet they did it, and they came out the other side, and they made settlements, and they built farms, and they built a whole country. It's just too amazing to me that people had the stamina, the strength, the courage, the belief in themselves to do that, Schalk.
Yeah, that's a fact. It was indeed momentous for that. You must remember something about the difference between the American Great Trek, if you want to call it that, and the South African Great Trek. The American Great Trek was always sanctioned by the state. It was always assisted by the government. They wanted to expand the United States. So they assisted, and they built forts, and the cavalry was always there on call. You still have to have this thing of next to the cavalry. It comes from those days, because the cavalry was always about only about a day's ride from where those wagons were. And there was there's those settlers. They were wagon trails on which the government built forts for them to move from one fort to the next, to the next, to the next. That never happened in South Africa. These guys, literally, as you narrated here, they packed up everything they had onto an ox wagon, not a horse-drawn wagon, an ox wagon or ox wagon, drawn wagon, and they would simply start moving into the vast hinterland with nothing in front of them. You wouldn't even know. They would send out scouts, and those scouts would tell them, well, you can go here, and there's a river, and so forth. But there's nothing consistent to which day they can move. It's not the east coast of America that they are moving to. It's just simply moving north. We're going north. As a buyer, there's a very strange Afrikaans speak. I can't really say it in English, but it goes about moving to the north. And that's where it comes from. We simply, and it's still today like that. Still today you find Afrikaners going into Mozambique, going into Botswana and Zambia, and all those places. We still have that. The Germans speak of Drang nach Osten. They have this urge to always move east. Now, Afrikaners are a little bit like that, but we're always moving north. So maybe one day we will end up back in Europe. That's
Well, it'll be doing Europe a huge favor, let me tell you, because they couldn't ask for better people. But Schalk, you know, I think because we're South African and because we come from families who did the Great Trek and because we learned about it in school, we kind of take it for granted. But the enormity of what these people did can't be stressed enough. As you say, there were no scouts. There were no people ahead of them. There was no cavalry to come save them. They packed their wagon and one or two families, off they went. And they didn't have a clue where they were going. They didn't know what was waiting for them. And then they discovered what was waiting for them, and that was a horrific shock, I'm sure. But the heroism, which they didn't consider, they never considered themselves heroes. They were just fed up and I'm going now, you know, taking my toys and leaving. And off they did that. It's the most amazing, amazing heroism to me that they created an entire country by people getting stubborn and angry and leaving. And South Africa was formed. It's an incredible story.
Yeah, we must remember what they came across and what they didn't know that they will face. During the same time as the British were taking over the Dutch colonies, etc., in the western half of South Africa, on the eastern side, there were two cultural and political events there taking place amongst the black tribe, and that was called the Defican and the Mefican. Now, those were simply empire forming and genocide between the black races, the black nations, between one another. You had on the East
could
Coast,
we call it colonizing?
Yes, they basically
Let's turn it around a little bit. They were colonizing as they came.
Yes, that was exactly what was happening. They were colonizing the land in the same way from the Khoisan people. You find Khoisan drawings all over South Africa, in Natal, in Northern Transvaal, everywhere. So the Khoisan people were living there in exactly the same way as in the Cape. And the black tribes, the Bantu tribes, were moving in from the north, and they were also colonizing. And then they were settling, and in that huge turmoil of settling, you had empires form. So in the very far south, you had the Tembu people and the Xhosa people, and those they started to form little kingdoms, but more into the north of Natal. Now this is about the 1800s to 1820, thereabouts. You had this great King Shaka Zulu. The Americans will definitely remember Shaka Zulu, and the British will remember them. Will remember him. He's seen as a so-called Napoleon of Africa. It's not merely on the scale of Napoleon, but he was empire building on his own, uniting the Nguni tribes into what was later called the Zulu nation. And in doing that, he genocided everything that didn't want to be part of his empire. Like Genghis Khan and these guys did in Europe and Asia in the far of history. The same happened in South Africa. You go to the tribal village, and if they didn't want to become part of the Zulu nation, you would simply destroy them and be eliminated. Even inside this own Zulu tribe, it was a terrible killing of anybody that in some way didn't agree with him. When his mother Nancy died, for instance, he went and he killed 2,000 young virgins just simply because he was sad about his mother. Things like that.
And he had people murdered for not being sad enough. So if they didn't cry loudly enough when his mom died, he would be murdered. No problem.
Yes, and because it was mass killings. He actually stopped the whole area between the Gela River and the Ndlubu River in the south. He created the border state between his empire and the Xhosa people and the Tembu people. And he became no man's land in the most literal form there is. He killed off everybody living in those areas. He displaced everybody he could. And they started running across Drakensberg to the west and into what is today called the Free State. The Matibeles, for instance, they are also Zulus. They ended up in Zimbabwe eventually, but they started moving all the way north, and the voortrekkers first encountered them in what is today, or well, in those days called the Transvaal, today called Mpumalanga and those areas. So once again, those people weren't living there, and they weren't building cities and civilizations there. They were running away from the Zulus, and that's why they encountered the voortrekker people. Very, very strangely, and this part is always left out in the history books. But if it was not for the Great Trade stabilizing South Africa in the hinterland, that killing would have gone on perpetually, and most probably you would only have had the Zulus, because the Zulus were killing everybody. It was the voortrekkers and the stabilizing effect of the Great Trade into the interior that actually stopped the Afrikaner and the Afrikaner. So, in a very ironic twist
at that moment in time, you had the formation of the Afrikaner people heading north, and you had the beginnings of the Zulu tribe heading south, but neither were yet a nation. The Zulus were not Zulus yet. They were a combination of tribes that had been absorbed in all the killing and sweeping before them, and the Afrikaners were not a nation of people yet either. They were the beginnings of a nation, and these two met and clashed.
Yes, and once again, not clashed because the voortrekkers, and I think also maybe the Zulus, but specifically the voortrekkers, wanted to go to war with the other side. It was simply, you're quite right, these huge turmoil and dynamics going on that these people didn't really have any pretty much control over, and they simply clashed. But the voortrekkers still wanted only one thing. They simply wanted peace and freedom. So you get where they started to clash with the black tribes and those running across the Drakensberg. They simply once again packed up and extended the Great Trek. They started moving even further into the interior, simply trying to get away from the wars of the Eastern Cape, and the British of the Eastern Cape, and the Zulus, and everybody trying to do their now. They were simply, I won't say running away, but they were simply moving into the direction of where they could simply go and live in freedom and peace. Natal, for instance, when the voortrekkers started moving over the Drakensberg, and they started moving into Natal, they did not go to war like the British did and take away land from the Zulu people. They went to the then King of Zulus, Karin, and they traded with him. And they wanted to make a peace treaty in which they said, we will take this piece of barren land that your forebears suffer basically include of anything, there's nothing. We will take that land. We want that. And they bought it and they traded for that. They didn't go to war about it. It was only after the murder of Peter Piet, one of the voortrekker leaders, that they and the Zulus then deciding that we must now destroy all the voortrekkers in Natal, that you had the war between the Zulus and the voortrekkers. But the voortrekkers didn't come there to make war. They simply came there to come and settle and live in peace. So, and that remains the theme of the whole Great Trek. That remains the theme of the establishment of the Boer republics. That even remains up to today. I'm a self-determinist. I want self-determination for the Boer people. I want a peaceful place to go and stay. I don't want to go and dominate the black races in South Africa like the British did. And I'm using the term British, not English, because an English-speaking person to me is not the enemy, but the British colonial system was the enemy. So I still want my freedom. I don't want to go and dominate over the Zulu people or the Xhosa people or the Sotho people. That was never the intent of the Afrikaner. Not throughout our entire history. Apartheid is this hugely humanized system.
Misunderstood.
Yes, apartheid was simply giving self-determination in designated areas to the black tribes so that we could live in peace in the white areas. That was what apartheid was.
And Schalk, if you look at it from the Afrikaner point of view, this is something they had wanted from the 1800s. It is something they were striving for, wanted for themselves. So it makes sense that way, that they wanted to give this to other people. It was something they fought hard for. They wanted so badly for themselves. So when we get to the apartheid thing, but as I say, we're laying foundations here, they wanted self-determination so badly. It was the greatest gift that they really could give to these disparate tribes around them, was something that they wanted. It wasn't a punishment. It was a, man, we fought for this. We want this for ourselves. So I'm sure you want it for yourself as well. It was a gift, definitely not meant badly.
No, definitely not. Even in the early 1800s, you would find that remember now, the Khoisan people that supposedly now the enemies of the Dutch, if you follow that narrative, and being slaved off and being killed off in the thousands, they still remain today. In fact, the colored population group is greater in number than the whites. So obviously we did genocide into such an extent that they the Aborigines in Australia.
Yeah.
Even those people were granted their full rights by the colonists. I mean, you left the colored people to their own devices. You didn't go and dominate and kill them and stuff like that. It simply never happened. And then as the Voortrekkers started moving inland, as I said, they actually stabilized the whole situation there, and they started creating the Boer Republics and the Boer Republics. Now this is something very interesting. There's no recorded war at any point between a Boer Republic and the Black Tribe, with the very exception of the wars between the Free State and the Sotho people, the Basutos. But the Boer Republics never made war against Black tribes. Sometimes you would have punishment. They would steal cattle and so forth, and the commander would go out and punish them and simply take cattle back. But they were not they were not full-scale wars between the Boer Republics and the Black tribes. Imagine yourself a war between the Transvaal Republic and the Zulu Kingdom. It simply never took place. In fact, there were peace treaties between the Zulu Kingdom and the later ZAR and the new republic that formed part of the ZAR. There were peace treaties between us.
Schalk, we're skipping ahead. We need to go back a step and look at the Battle of Blood River. We need to look at the murders of Piet Retief and his party, because those were amongst the first. We had how many border wars with the black side? I'm sorry, I've lost the number here.
If I remember correctly, there were 11 border wars, and those were border wars between the British colonial empire and the Xhosa people, not the colonists. The colonists wanted to live in peace, and unfortunately, there was a constant warring between the Xhosas coming into the Cape Colony and the British going into Xhosa land, and that created war after war after war after war, and that was one of the reasons the Great Trek even took place, because the farmers living there, the traders living there, they simply tired. They grew tired of this constant war between the British and the Xhosa. And they started moving into the Free State.
So now we have the clash of the black meeting white, the two waves of immigration, if you want to put it that way. How and where did that happen? Because those battles are, the Battle of Blood River is a landmark historical thing that has never happened before in history and has never happened again since that time. Such a great foe against so few people, and the results of that. And it needs to be spoken about. I mean, Schalk, you and I and Mel, we all know about it, but it was a massive thing. It's huge, and it also shaped the history of South Africa. So we need to talk about that in some detail.
Let's do that, Karin. Okay, now that the Great Trek is now taking place, the Trek Boers, they are not called Trek Boers anymore. They are now, well, the beginning of the Afrikaner nation, the Boer nation. they are starting to move into the interior of South Africa. And one of the places that they moved into now, across the Drakensberg to the east now. Remember that the Zulus are on the eastern side. They are driving the other tribes westward over. But now the Voortrekkers start moving eastward over the Drakensberg mountain range and into Natal. And initially, there's peace. They start to barter and they start to trade with the Zulu people, and they negotiate. They tell the Zulu king, give us this piece of barren land, you're not using it, we want it, give this to us, and we will trade with you. And in concluding that, they sent the very well-known leader, Peter Tief, and about 65 or 66 of his followers. They sent those people to Dungan to go and draw up this peace treaty and do this deal, this land deal, so that they can live in peace there. But something goes amiss, something goes strange there. Historians differ about what happened and who was actually the good guy and the bad guy there. I'm not going to go into that now. But something happens and there's a misunderstanding, and Peter Tief and he's following his 66 or 67 people, I can't remember specifically now. They are murdered there in Zululand at the capital city of the Zulus. They are murdered there. And the decree goes out from Dingaan, the Zulu king. You must wipe out all the Voortrekkers on the side of the mountain. And these huge impies. Now impies is like a division of soldiers, but these impies full of Zulu tribes, what you call it, krijgers. The warriors, they go and they start attacking all the Voortrekkers. Voortrekkers are still in the attacking groups. So, for instance, at Blauwkrans, there is a terrible murder where they kill of all the women and children. It's a terrible thing going on there, and on many other places. It's really genocide at its best that's going on there. So at one point in time, the Voortrekkers, just after these things started happening, they started to regroup, and at a junction of two rivers, today it's called Blood River, they draw up a Voortrekker Laar. Now, Laar is where you basically put all the ox wagons tail to end, and you make a circle, and they decide we will now defend this place. And the Zulus come, and the Zulus is about that impies, those impies. Some records say it's about 12,000 people, some say it's up to 45,000 warriors. They came and they started attacking that position at Blood River. In the lager of Blood River, in the Voortrekker Laar, there's only about 450 modern weapons armed with voorlaaiers, with black powder type of guns. Simply, you must load them one bullet at a time. It takes some time. If you're very quick, you can maybe shoot 2 or 3 bullets a minute. And this happens just before the Zulus come for the attack, about a day or two before that. An oath is made to the Lord. A covenant is made to the Lord, to God, in which the Voortrekkers say that if you give us the victory over our enemy, then we will take this day on which it happens, and we will make it a Sabbath. That is the day of the covenant. Still today, one of the key holidays, the key remembrances of the Afrikaner people, Geloftedag, the day of the covenant. The Zulus attack, and during a day-long fight, now this is where it becomes mind-numbing about what happened at Blood River. After about a day's fight, the Zulus are beaten terribly. They start to retreat back to Zululand. Now there's the record that say as many as 2,000 to 5,000 Zulus were killed in that battle. One single death. Only 3 people very likely wounded, of which the Voortrekker commander himself, but no deaths. But on the Zulu side, about 2,000. In fact, that is where the name Blood River comes from. There was such an amount of killing of Zulu warriors that the water started to turn red, Blood River. And the Zulus are beaten terribly during that. After that, the Voortrekkers moved into Zululand. There's further battles and further skirmishes, and in the end, the Zulus sue for peace, and peace come back to Natal, and the Republic of Natalia is then created. So that is basically what happened in that phase of history. We can go into small little details, but that is the oversight of what happened. So after Blood River, the Zulus are defeated, and the Boer Republic of Natalia is established.
So, Schalk, at that time, were the British in Natal, or did they come later?
They had a trading post like the Cape Colony in the early days. They had a trading post in Port Natal, which is today Durban.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any land or any colonies at that point in time in that area of South Africa.
Wow, I always thought that they had named it Natal. No, it was the Portuguese who named it, isn't it? Natal.
Yes, it was, yeah. Natal simply means pre-born or birth. It was around Christmas. I can't remember the year now.
Yes.
That the Portuguese landed there the first time, and they called the land there Natal, and it relates to the birth, the Christmas story. So yeah, but that's quite a bit for. That's about 200 or 300 years now before.
I get that. I just wanted to know whether the British actually had a colony there then. So now you speak about Zululand. They went into Zululand. Was it established that that is where the Zulu were, or did it become Zululand later? Or I don't want to make it seem as if we went into the Zulu kingdom, unless that's what happened.
It was a confederation of different tribes that basically ascribed to Shaka Zulu in the first place, and later on then Gandingan was his brother, by the way, not his son. It was a loose confederation then of those tribes that basically subjudicated themselves to the Zulus. The Zulus themselves is also just a tribe. So don't get this idea of statehood. It's not really statehood. It's a loose confederation falling under the Zulu king.
Mm. Okay, so now the Boers are in Natal, but at the same time, some of them had branched off and gone to the west, hadn't they?
Yes, to the west and the north, there were different trek parties. Some of them went into Natal, the typical old thing of Afrikaners. Everyone wants to follow their own head. So some went into Natal, and some settled in the Free State, what was actually called the Free State, and some went over the Vaal River. It was not called the Vaal River at that stage, but into that area, Transvaal, over the Vaal. And some of them even ended up in Mozambique, what is today called Mozambique, as far as that. Simply trying to establish some kind of a state or republic to govern themselves and be free.
But they didn't really want to congregate in masses of them either, did they? I mean, each family wanted to be kind of self-supporting and leave us alone. Don't bring your laws and your taxes and your rubbish to us. Just leave us alone, and we'll make a go of it.
No, that's a fact. If you remember that in later years there were only two Boer republics, being the ZAR, Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek, that's the old Transvaal, and the Free State. But in the early days of establishing republics, the different Boer groupings established little republics all over the place. I can't remember their amount, but it must have been something like 12 or 16 different Boer republics, if I remember correctly. But everybody were establishing republics. Everybody were building states all of a sudden. And it was only later on, a little bit of a small little civil war, where President Kreer, late President Paul Kreer was involved, for instance, where they started to amalgamate these small little republics into bigger units. So that's a fact. The idea was never to go and establish this big new country in the north. It was simply people moving and homesteading and deciding, well, we're going to have a republic here now. And they formed the whole Volksraad. Volksraad is like a little government, and they started to govern themselves.
So, Schalk, if we were to relate it to somewhere in the rest of the world, would it be pretty much like the Scots clans, where there were little groups of people who, I own this piece of land and I rule this piece of land, but generally it was a family matter. It wasn't a state organized or anything. Is that a good comparison?
There's definitely comparison between the two, yes. Yes, definitely. Because in those trekker groups, you would find families and a few families trekking together, and sometimes they would end up fighting with one another, and they would split up and join up, and so it was this typical thing of every Afrikaner doing, every Boer doing exactly what his finders telling them. But yes, in the end, well, and you had bitter struggles and bitter fighting between these groups, not on the level of them shooting one another and killing off one another. Very bitterness between some of them. You would find one group saying, well, we want to live here and stay here, and the other group, or the other parts of that group saying, no, but we still want to move even further north and go and look for even better pastures for our cattle and so forth. And it would turn into the squabble, and they would become angry at one another, and one group will move even further. So that's basically what was going on here. As I said, definitely the objective was not creating this huge empire somewhere in the north and taking land from the black tribes and stuff like that, like you had the British expanding their empire. That was never the objective of the Voortrekkers. The Voortrekkers simply wanted to be free. That's the long and the short of it.
Wow, you know, Schalk, it's so funny because the Afrikaner today is exactly the same. I think you said on a previous program, stubborn and hard-headed. I think it was you that said that. And my goodness, is it the truth? It is so funny that they haven't changed through the centuries. So I would just like to do a little aside here, because we talk about them crossing the Drakensberg. Now Schalk went just past that as if it was a mere nothing, but it was an enormous undertaking, because what they had to do was take their wagons to pieces and hoist each piece up on these leather ropes that they made, hoist them up and lower them down on the other side and put them together down on the opposite side of the mountain. I mean, this was an incredible undertaking when you think that your worldly goods are in this wagon, and piece by piece you have to tie them onto a piece of leather, haul them up by sheer brute strength, and put them down the other side. And the challenges that these people face and the hurdles that they overcome are such a big part of what a South African is, that I don't believe we can just zip through them. It's important to take note of the incredible things that they did, and didn't seem to turn a hair or raise an eyebrow. Okay, this needs doing. How are we going to do it? And that is where Boer maak 'n plan. It's a saying we have in South Africa. A farmer makes a plan. And we have an aside to that a woman makes a plan that works, but we won't go there. So I do firmly believe that a Boer maak 'n plan, an Afrikaner makes a plan. I really believe that it started way back then, because, man, the challenges that they had to overcome, and they just did. It doesn't, you don't hear in family histories, oh my goodness, that was so hard. Oh, we suffered. Oh man, you just hear they did it. And so they were over the berg in about 3 months, because it took forever to do the slow hoisting up and lowering down. But nobody whines about it. It's just a matter of fact thing. Like Schalk, he just went right past it, blazed right through it. Okay, so they crossed the Drakensberg, because that is how the white South African nation are. A challenge is there to be overcome, and we don't need to talk about it afterwards. But that's a fact. It's the small details that really
it's a bump in the road. It was simply a bump in the road. We went over it. So now we're in the town, and we like it.
Yes, but for me, it's those things that really excite me. I get all fired up about stuff like that, because looking at myself, my family, and my friends, we are not equipped to do it. We couldn't do it today. But those people just took everything in their stride, and moved ahead and just kept on going. And the hardships they endured must have been unbelievable. But as family history, don't talk about hardship.
The term boerenrate. Now, what is a boerenraad? It's a medicine of the boers. The poor people didn't have doctors. They didn't have physicians coming from Europe, etc. They literally lived off the land. They started to see that this little bush works for this and that one works for that. And in the end, through herbs and through all kinds of different procedures, etc., they built up a knowledge about how to treat people who are sick. And that is called boerenraad. Now, I don't go to the doctor. This is a little secret now, the whole world knows about it. I don't go to the doctor. I still use boerenraad. If I have a toothache, I use a certain herb and I put it into my tooth and it works. If I have a stomach ailment, I make a little tea or something, not dafa, not marijuana, something else, and I drink it, and I'm fine. Because that's boerenraad. It's been handed down through all the centuries. Unfortunately, we're losing that knowledge. We're losing it at a very fast pace. But that's one of the things to underline what you are saying. Right? For these people to be at the point that they have to live off the land and make medicine for themselves. That indicates to you the tenacity of these people. When you go to the Karoo, I grew up in the Karoo myself. And if you go into the graveyard in the Karoo, you will see a huge amount of child graves. The attrition rate amongst infants must have been tremendous. Sometimes you will find 9, 10, 8, 12 people of child infants of a family. You can see how they die. Every year or every single year, that family lost a child. So the attrition rate amongst those people would have been tremendous. Crossing the Drakensberg. How do you cross a mountain with ox wagon? There's no roads, nothing. You're quite right, they had to take off the wheels because the wheel, it's not worth anything. And they had to haul it with boats up the mountain and down the mountain. That is basically what they do. At one stage, there's this legend, but it's found in fact where some of the voortrekker men said, no, but we can't do this now. And the women said, well, we will even go barefoot over this mountain, but we're going. And that's so typical of the Afrikaner people. We're so stubborn that sometimes we bugger ourselves off. We're so stubborn we simply can't stop at what we are doing. And that illustrates to you how the character of the Afrikaner of the black people are.
Yeah, absolutely, Schalk. You must never tell an Afrikaner he can't or he mustn't do something, because that is like a red rag to a bull, and they will just prove you wrong both ways. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Amazing. But yes, you were talking about the medication, okay? So now you head off into a place that you don't know. You don't know the plants. You don't know what's good or bad because it's different vegetation from the Cape. The Cape has got its fynbos and those things, but through the Karoo and on the other side, it's totally different. So they must have experimented. I hate to think what that cost them, how many lives and sore stomachs and headaches and sickness that might have cost them to be able to find out which of those plants did what. I mean, they are, it's the whole story is incredible. And for me, you can't just fly through it. We have to look at the stuff, the challenges they face. I mean, it's one of the things that I miss most about here is because I believe in those boerenrate too. I've got a whole book of them, but you can't get the ingredients here because we don't have the same plants here. We don't have the borsstrippels and those things that are so prevalent you can buy them anywhere in South Africa. We can't get them here.
Yeah, for instance, if you get bronchitis, you go to the doctor and he now gives you medicine and antibiotics, but you still sick for 2 weeks when you have bronchitis. For bronchitis, you use a herb, it's called wynrite. I don't know what the English is for that. And you make a tea of wynrite and you drink it. I can guarantee you within 3 days you cure. It's as simple as that.
And cheap and easy, Schalk. If you just, and there are many books on boerenrate, and you just Do it and it works. You don't need to spend these fortunes on drugs that are going to make you sicker, or do have some side effect that's going to make you worse. And that is what I admire so about the Afrikaans culture in South Africa, because they have faced these challenges. They have found solutions. They have never said, I can't, or too much for me, oh dear, I'm going to swoon and lie down and have a little hissy fit. They just look at the problem, make a plan, and make it work. It's incredible. And I would like this series that you and I are doing to look at the minutiae, the things like the herbal medication, the things like crossing the Drakensberg, the daily heroics of these people that have made them what they are today, because they are incredible people. They have overcome incredible odds, and they haven't finished yet. They are nowhere near finished, no matter what the world is going against.
We're definitely not near finished. I can see the spirit of the Afrikaner standing up again. It's slowly, but it's surely standing up again. And it's dangerous, and I'm not threatening anybody, but it's very dangerous to drive a boer into a corner, because there's only one way out, and that's taking down the enemy. So it's a very dangerous thing that the Julius Malemas and the Jacob Zumas of the world is doing at this point in time. We're going to reach a point where the Afrikaner is going to feel that we are now being cornered, and the moment that you reach that level, it's going to turn into something very ugly. But we need to send the message. We're not looking for a fight. We're not falling for a fight. But it's been brought upon us, and there's going to be consequences because of it.
I think at this stage, now I'm jumping forward to today, but I really do think that at this stage, the patience and the desire for peace in the Afrikaner that started in 1652, when the Afrikaner started developing, is taken by some people as cowardice or being unwilling to fight. But I think that is a very, very silly mistake to make, because the talk of civil war amongst whites only started when the talk of land redistribution without any compensation started. That is where the boer, the farmer, the real meaning of the word, drew the line and said, not a damn are you taking my land from me. Not today, not tomorrow, not next month. This is my land. My parents, my grandparents, my great-great-grandparents worked on this piece of land, and you come and take it, and I'm going to fight back. And I've been watching this very, very closely. Now, the blacks have talked about the threat of civil war for some time, but it was only at that stage that I saw whites stand up and said, No,
that's a fact. That's a fact. And once again, this is so true to our character. We will take a lot of beating before we say this is now enough. But when we reach that point, then there's no return from that. I don't want war. I'm the Delaray in this.
No.
General Delaray stood up in the Transvaal Volksraad, and he said, we can't go to war against the British. But mark my words, you will already have run away and I will still be in the field. And that was what happened with Delaray. So I'm also a Delaray. I don't want war, but I'm going to be the last in the battlefield. So that's once again the spirit of Afrikaners, and it's starting to stand up. Just very interesting. The greatest empire that the world has ever known was the British Empire, and they couldn't genocide and kill us off. Now, really, a million people running around with red berets, do they really think that they're going to do it? They simply don't have it. It's as simple as that.
But as I said, Schalk, I think that the willingness, the passivity, the not fighting back has been mistaken for fear and cowardice. But the history of the Afrikaner says, watch out. I don't see any other way. And as you said, I'm not preaching war. I don't want that to happen because it's going to be a disaster, and not just for South Africa. That is going to be the most disastrous situation we could ever look at. But certain people need to stop pushing you. And
that's a fact. I'm always looking for peace, and I'm always trying to build bridges and speak to black people of all levels of society, and bring the message across. There's no need for war. There's no need for where these crazy ones are now going to. But unfortunately, it seems as if it's starting to fall on deaf ears. And yeah, I'm not scared about what's going to happen in future. I really hope and I pray for peace. I have small children. I want peace, but it's moving into a direction where things are becoming inevitable, and I don't like that. I really don't like that.
And we're coming up to the last 5 minutes. So, Schalk, I agree with you to a great degree. I do agree with you, but we don't want that war. And that is why self-determination becomes so important, because from the very beginning, where we started today's story, the Boer, that's all the Boer has ever wanted. Leave me alone to live my life on my terms. It's worshipping my God and speaking my language. They wanted it then, and they want it now. And we started this story today with Once Upon a Time. Well, they have not yet lived happily ever after, but in a month's time, we will have Schalk back. We will continue from here. And I really hope that not only have you enjoyed this tour through history that Schalk has given us, because he is the most amazing historian. I love listening to him, but that you've learned something from it, that you've learned to understand that the people of South Africa are good people. They've made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. They've done bad things. Every nation does. They are good people. All they want is a peaceful place in the sun. And it doesn't matter if it's desert sun. That's all they want, is their place in the sun where they can live in peace.
Thank you very much, Karin. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
That was truly beautiful, both of you. You know, as an English-speaking Afrikaner, the one thing I've always felt strongest and most connection to is the spirit of freedom that has existed in the Afrikaners and the Boers. And you know, just the fact that they're named like the Orange Free State and Vryheid, the freedom thing is something that I feel it in my genetic memory. And it's the one. It's just the innate right of each and every human being to have that freedom, and it's been taken from us over the years, over and over again. But I tell you what, we're still here. We're just as stubborn. I mean, you know, I had to laugh because my family are Afrikaners and just, you know, absolutely as stubborn as can be and so hard-headed. But I guess that's kind of a blessing in disguise, because it's taught me so much, and it's given me my fortitude. So lovely to go down this amazing journey with you both and hear a little bit more about my own history. Very, very touching, and looking forward to obviously touching bases where we get into the Anglo-Boer War, because after all this amazing journey they went through, the Great Trek, they then were faced with yet more and more and more. And, you know, they won the first war, you know, amazingly, which I won't get into that now, but we look forward to actually catching up with you, Schalk, and you can give us the details on that when we speak to you next. But just before I go, I just wanted to check with you guys for media mentions. Schalk, where can we find more of your work and what you're doing?
All over the place. That's a quick question with a long answer. I'm mostly here on behalf of the party that I'm a member of, the National Conservative Party, the NCP, and you can find us. There's a webpage. It's unfortunately mostly in Afrikaans. It's
NKP.
It's frozen out there. Karin, whilst it's frozen, give us your details as well. Where can we find your stuff?
RadioFreeSouthAfrica.com is my webpage, or Radio Free South Africa on YouTube and Facebook.
Lovely. All right, I take it we've lost Schalk there, but good timing. And I just want to say to you, as always, Karin, you know, I honor and treasure the person you are, the passion with which you go at this cause, and it's truly a pleasure to co-present this along with you, and look forward to the next installment of Stop South African Genocide. I guess that's it from us for tonight, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in, and we'll speak again. Bye-bye.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.